if you want to follow along with the home edition, we're going back to the BPL site, which soon will hopefully be merging with the EdTech site, and we get to have it all in one nice cohesive package. But if you go to bit.ly/BPL site, under the drop down for home is the From1to1 vision, and we should be able to get there. Today, believe it or not, is the last of our vision sessions for the year, and I'm sure that you do believe it because it's the end of the year. But but we will be talking about at the end of the session, moving forward, what these get to be about and who gets to come. So I'm kind of excited about that part of the conversation. But for the moment, if you scroll down on the site, you will find session number 5. So session number 5 is today. And although I was considering putting either Jackie or Nick on the spot to talk about the vision, because we did a retreat where...
This is my first meeting, buddy.
Well, I was going to show you your video.
Oh.
Yeah, I wasn't going to ask.
No, I wasn't going to ask you.
You should.
Okay.
You should show it.
But I did link to them, so if you want to go and look at them, you can do that. But I will do the honors here. Oh, good. It's back.
Right on.
Yes. I was hoping that in the recording we would have the alarm.
Yeah.
So
It started
there was
when I
someone
first
who came and
then
shut it off,
and
but
now
we'll
it's
see.
on again.
Are we okay?
It's good. It just kind of goes crazy every now and then. So much that security has taught me how to turn it off.
Yeah.
Good call.
Right.
Good call. God, that makes me so happy. So we start with the learner in the center, whether that's a student learner, adult learner, school or district leader, who is connected to a device that is personalized for her needs, using physical spaces with physical resources that allow her to create things that matter to her, make things that matter to her. And that she is connected to other learners and to other teachers in her school, in her district, and outside of it. That she owns her data, understanding where she is in her learning and what she needs to do in order to move forward. That she is constantly sharing her learning with others and getting feedback on that learning from her network or from her other teachers. That she is earning credentials that will have an effect after graduation, that giving her access to opportunities not just within school but outside of school, and that as a system we are constantly moving the boxes for her, giving her exactly what she needs when she needs it. So we have throughout this year targeted and tackled different ones of these elements. Yeah, right? So you say.
Yeah, that's what the doctor said.
We have tackled space. We have tackled a couple of the different components. But the one thing that we haven't really tackled is actually the kiddo or adult learner. And if you want to, if you click on the person, you can actually open up and see both Nick and Jackie's version of...
Hello, and welcome to a...
Nice.
Oh, cool.
where you can see the physical representation of the vision, if you want to take a look at that. But today I want to tackle the person in the middle. If you get rid of all of the other elements of the vision itself, you are left with a single learner. And the reason why I want to do that is because actually Dawn has given me a wonderful opportunity to mentor a child over at Fulton. So Gabriel is in the 3rd grade, and he is just an amazing kid. He's an absolutely amazing kid, but needs something different. And it is fairly clear from even the first moment that you meet Gabriel that he needs something different. And so one of the things that I want to start to think about is, what would happen if we thought about a single child? So thinking about the personalization side of things, right? So giving a student what he or she needs when they need it, but thinking about if a classroom is a classroom of 1 rather than a classroom of 30 or 15 or however many kids you have in your charge, what would happen if you only had 1 kid in the classroom? Okay? Because ultimately, personalization is that. Like, if you break it down, you are saying, how do we make it small enough so that a student has his or her own plan, that they have their own device, that they have their own resources, and that they can advocate for their own learning. So I want to take a look at an example, not the example clearly, but an example of what it has looked like over the last couple of weeks. And so what I did is I literally, maybe this is a little too literal, but if you go to the next slide and then click, you can get a zoomed in version of this picture. And what I would love to think about, so if you click on it, you can kind of zoom in and see, but this is a Google Classroom of exactly 1 student. The name of the class is Gabriel blank is awesome. This is the student. And essentially what we have done, and we may look at a couple of the videos that we made today because I was there earlier, but essentially this is the interaction where these are, to my knowledge, some of the more extensive responses than what he generally puts out in his regular class. I don't know if you want to.
There was the day that he just sent the flip the bird emoji to his teacher like 100 times.
Well, I mean, there's
that
that,
was
right?
pretty, yeah.
That was a response.
Yeah.
So he's
This is
obviously frustrated about something.
Mm-hmm. Or he figured out how to send the flip the bird emoji and just wanted to do that.
thought it meant something different.
Right. Thought it meant something different.
Well, you know, Darla, y'all remember Darla at Aurora Hills? She used to put the little poop emoji because she thought it was the chocolate kids. Her teacher's like, why do you keep sending me the poop emoji? No, it's a chocolate kiss.
You're not even
No.
saying, okay.
No, absolutely, that's what that
That's
is.
all.
You're number 1.
But yeah, so so a little bit about him. He is what I would call twice exceptional. So he's, but he's not officially labeled as gifted because he refused to take the assessment, which now for gifted and talented you have to take and score a certain score on the assessment.
Was it him and or his parents?
He would not take the test.
Oh, wow.
He just wouldn't. He won't do much of anything. He has not done much work, but when they tested him for special ed, he tested in literacy at a high school level in literacy. So
What grade is he in?
third, and his math is about 3rd grade. But yeah, his literacy is high school level, and there's a mood disorder of some sort that we're trying to get to the bottom of. He's been diagnosed ADHD, but we think there's something else in there. Might potentially be on the autism
spectrum
scale.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things, and you know, I don't think we're breaking any rules here because we're not talking about last names and things like that, but clearly you could find this kid if you wanted to find this kid. But essentially, this was.
I'm going to do a dab.
What is that?
This is him.
Dab.
That's a dab. What's a dab?
This is the dab.
When do you do a dab?
A dab.
Why are you dabbing all the time?
On a dab day.
Every dab day?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Do you dab at home?
Yeah.
Why?
Because I like to.
Because you like to? In celebration, or is it something you do when you're frustrated?
Something I do whenever I'm excited.
What are you excited about right now?
I don't know.
Seeing you.
Tango simulator.
Playing Goat Simulator?
So essentially, we had a conversation based upon him playing a game, and he was able to have the conversation, and then this was the conversation afterwards, where he was doing a dab that, like, I can't imagine that's a thing that he is doing all of the time just in the classroom and things like that. And so this is not trying to say, and we should have everyone with this level of access where there is someone who can pull out for 30 minutes at a time. What I want us to consider, though, is essentially what would you do differently if you could make a classroom of one? If you could make a classroom for every kid, what is different in that space? Whether that's an online classroom, a physical classroom, what is different in a classroom of one versus a classroom of 30 or 15, 20?
Well, you were able to customize his name.
Yep.
And say he's awesome.
Well, he is,
He is awesome.
right?
But I mean, you know, that makes him feel good.
Yeah, I mean, he gave me hugs multiple times, you know, throughout, and it's like, all right, clearly there is something that is going on here that is different, but I would love for you to talk to maybe,
Oh, I'm sorry.
no, that's good, but maybe 2 groups of 3, and talk about what is different in a classroom of 1 versus a classroom of 30. And I want to sort of call out some of those things and notice and name them. What is different in a classroom of 1? This is one example, not the only example, or maybe even a particularly good example, other than the fact that it is something that this child is getting something out of. So what's the difference between a classroom of 1 and a classroom of 30? Well, let's pull it back together. That sounds like a good point to pull it back together. So say why you think Genius Hour is kind of where you guys are headed for next year.
We had a retreat with our design team on Thursday and had them do some research and some thinking about why Genius Hour for students and for teachers, because our teachers will be doing their own Genius Hour once a month as part of our professional learning. So we've set aside an hour a month for them to explore something that is passion for them. And the whys that we came up with were, we've lost this love of learning for learning's sake. And until teachers start experiencing that again, they can't create that for students. For students, it's the motivation, it's the drive. I have the picture, so I'll find the picture and send it out, or send it to Ben, of the chart that was co-created by this group. But it was basically the motivation piece, the energy from learning about learning and learning about something you're passionate about, and then the opportunity to share that with others, with truly authentic audiences. So that's why we're doing it. So yeah, everybody, P through adults, will be having a Genius
An
Hour.
hour a month for
An
each
hour and a
teacher?
month for staff,
Right.
an hour a week for
And
kids.
when you talk about this truly sharing with authentic audience, I'm really curious about that. What do you think that looks like? So is it have to come every month and share? Is it sharing over the course of a semester?
It's very much student driven, so learner driven, I won't say student, learner driven. Learners decide when they're ready to share. So the research out there on Genius Hour, when you go and look at articles and things about places that have incorporated Genius Hour, kids, learners, get excited about sharing what they're learning, and they want to share it. So one teacher just had 5-minute slots, and kids could sign up for 1, 2, or 3 5-minute slots at any point in time. So you could have up to 15 minutes to share, but you had to be prepared for what you were going to share that day. So you could do a small 5 minutes, or you could do all 15. So learners decide when they're done.
They decide when they're ready to share, and do they decide who to share it with?
Yes. And then they're responsible for inviting those people.
Yeah, I feel like, sorry, go ahead. That idea of interest as a driver, something that you talked a little bit about over here as well. How did you see that as a sort of function of the classroom of 1?
Oh, you're talking to us, huh? I
yeah.
thought you were-
Oh, I thought you were asking, so
Interest.
that
how do I see interest as a function of the classroom?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, people learn what they're interested in, right? Period. If they're not interested in it, they might comply, but they're not learning, so it's not deep learning. And when you have a classroom of one, it's easier to take whatever they're interested in and tune it in a way that also then meets, the needs of our educational system. With, like, if I had one student and they were way into
Good luck, Ran.
football, which would be ideal for me, then I can teach physics through the lens of football. If somebody's really into Minecraft, then I can teach coding through the lens of Minecraft. If somebody's really interested in poetry, you know what I'm saying? So whatever the interest is, if it's one person, you can find a way. Because the whole point of education is to help people pursue their passions.
Exactly.
Right? So everything is in any one passion. The problem comes when you've got a classroom of 33 kids and each one has a different passion. And trying to find that way to do your due diligence as a high school English teacher and at the same time meeting the needs and the interests of your individual students.
So can I
You
ask
got
you a question?
AirDrop on?
What's that?
AirDrop, do you have it on?
Yeah.
On your, what are you on?
I'll be on this one over here, and you can airdrop to me. What Wi-Fi are you on? Dawn's iPhone 7. You should be able to send it to me. Yeah.
Okay, so I sent you 4 pictures.
Thank you.
So, I want to play the devil's advocate for a minute, because I have a teacher I'm currently having this discussion with, right? And very well, kids can't do math nowadays, and they can't do this, they can't do that, right?
Yep.
Let's try to find something they're interested in, and they'll be able to do math. I'm curious to hear other perspectives from, okay, well, yeah, we should let them learn what they're interested in. If they're interested in football, they can learn math through football, etc. But how do we do that for, 150 kids, right, as a teacher? And how do we make sure that all kids are able to do these things that, it says they need to do?
Right.
Right.
Well, if you give
it's scalability, but I think, I'm sorry, I didn't
No,
mean
go
to
ahead.
interrupt you.
No, good.
You sure? I think the secret lies in, and that does not mean that this would be easy or instantaneous, or this could even be just a vision of something we would strive to have, would be for the students to take the ownership of the standards and choose their interest in a way to show the standards. But that flips education, but it's the only way. Teachers cannot possibly individualize their lessons, but they can, you can be so proud, personalize. And the difference between personalization and individualization is who's doing the work.
Yep.
In individualization, the teacher's doing all of the work, and the student can still comply and get through. In personalization, the student has to do the work. The rub comes with the students that won't do it.
So if I'm
Right.
Or they don't know
clear,
how, or.
if I'm clear, if I have the standards I'm teaching, give it math, science, whatever, I would first start with empowering the students to understand the standards.
Oh, yeah.
And to say, okay, here's how I'm going to show proficiency or whatever you will of this standard, right?
Right.
And then, okay, we personalize it, right, so that they can then go off.
You don't even have to use quotes. That's just what you would do.
Right? Or we even empower the student, right,
Right.
to go off or not to go off, but to be there to decide what it is they're gonna learn about, how they're gonna learn about it, and come back, right?
Right.
And they're gonna make mistakes, they're gonna have pitfalls, but we can be there to help them back up.
And I think part of it is training wheels, of giving them, when you put a blank piece of paper in front of anyone and say, well, write about whatever. I think that's way too broad. I think there still needs to be, it's kind of like how I feel about maker spaces. Well, I'm just really talking today. Maker spaces without a problem to solve in mind, or a situation to solve for, or something, is just messing around, and I think most kids just would end up twisting things into spirals or whatever. I know I would. But if you give them a problem to solve, so when you're personalizing, you know, keeping it, okay, these are the standards that we're addressing right now, this is what we're going for. Show me how you understand these standards within this parameter, right? Because otherwise, it's too big. It's especially too big for little kids, but it's too big for high school kids. There's just too many, like they'll never get started. It'll be paralysis by analysis.
Right.
So.
Yeah. Jackie, what were you thinking about?
Oh, I was gonna say, they're doing it 60 minutes, so,
Minimum
yeah.
Per
but-
week?
per week.
A week, yeah, but then maybe, you know, they can make sure they cover things, but maybe they can make some connections with what they're doing that 60 minutes when they're in class. Oh, yeah, you know.
And what we talked, it was interesting talking with my team because they decided that we were going to start immediately. That we were going to set aside the time right away, with the idea though that probably the first quarter would be front loading some skills that kids need about how do you choose a passion, what do you do with it when you've chosen it, and it might be perhaps a guided passion project where they all learn to do something together rather than jumping into individualization all at the same time for a whole class.
Well, especially each year they get easier, you
Yes.
know, but the first
And
year
this
it's
year,
new to everybody.
we're not looking at tying it to standards. I don't care. Because I know that presentation skills and research skills and information literacy
Right.
are gonna have to be part of what kids learn. So those are in the standards, they're embedded, so I'm not gonna say, we're not measuring, there's not gonna be an assessment of this, not this time, not this year. Next year perhaps, but not this year.
So that brings me to maybe a case in point. This was the video that Gabrielle made today, featuring Goat Simulator.
There you go.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if you're familiar
Just
with
for fun.
I made Harry Potter and the other world disappear.
Why did you do that?
I became a wizard.
So you made the other people disappear when you became a wizard? And are these people on the track? Are they wizards as well?
Yeah. I don't know.
No, they're not.
So
They're just regular people.
this is the thing that he was doing while he was talking about, we talked about a book that he had read, we talked about a number of other things, but this was a method by which we got to, and again, this is not a lesson plan. This is
It's not meant to be.
right. But the idea,
Relationship builder.
right? Like you talked about that, and there is a little bit of vulnerability on my side and his. Like I have not explored this game extensively as much as my 8-year-old son has, right? And so in one part of it, we go into a sewer, and we happen to find dancing Ninja Turtles that he then, they start kicking him.
That's very true.
And he has to drag them around. And I'm like, all right, so they're on fire from the
What's your,
kebabs that they're cooking.
What would
And
be
then,
your YouTuber name?
You know,
And this is a game, or this is something he created?
no, this is a game that it's called Goat Simulator, where you're literally a goat walking around a city. So, you know, which is a thing, and that was what excited him, and that he had a level of interest. But it is something that I had to work at really hard to figure out, and how does this fit, right? Like getting him talking and having some level of academic language is very much a standard that he does not get assessed on a lot, is my understanding, right? But at the same time, he's playing Goat Simulator during school, right? And so there is the part of you that is very much like whatever the alter ego of the teacher that you're speaking about, where it's like, I've got standards to teach. Can we let them play goats, or whatever the equivalent is, right? Like it doesn't have to be Goat Simulator, clearly. But, and so there is a struggle there for level of interest as well as avenue for the more important, or maybe not more important, but important aspect of learning the content that we know is going to serve them well, either later in school or later in life. And so,
Well, this is clearly for him some sort of entertainment, but I'm very curious what the interest is. Like, what is the interest in running around the city as a goat? I have no clue. But I'd be really curious to hear what your
Haven't
son.
you always wanted to run around the
Yes,
city as a
absolutely,
goat?
or a chicken, right, you know? And I would be really curious to hear what your son or Gabriel or other young kiddos would say about that and why they would see an interest, right? And maybe it's a thing where they wanna make video games, maybe they like, I don't know. Then leads to inroads, right? And we have people like James who do video game design. Okay, well, you wanna work on that. There's much more complexity to what you're seeing here, right? Which might capture them.
yeah.
But I'm really curious about what that interest is that drives them to that point.
So we talked a little bit about that. We talked about making games and things like that, and that's something that he would be interested in. But the biggest thing was, it is an open world, essentially, much like Minecraft, right? Like, it is an open world, there are no limits to what you can do in this space. You are constantly discovering new things and trying to figure out what makes what work. And like when he went around the track and did the hurdles, right? It kept saying, oh, you almost have it. Just do one more lap. And after 3, he realized, oh, I'm being trolled by the game, essentially. Right? Like, there's no treat for me at the end of this. I am learning that I have to move on. And so he actually, as a component of like, I am learning from the thing that I can't keep doing the same thing and expect a different result. And so it's just a very interesting moment where he's sort of like, oh, and now I need to go over here and try this again. Right? The question that I would like to tackle now is thinking about the reality of, we don't have classrooms of 1. Right? Like, that is a reality for exactly no one. How is it that we can make our classrooms of 30 or our caseloads of 130?
Except for Kevin and I, we have a classroom.
Yeah.
How do we make it more like a classroom of 1?
Well, I'm wondering about like what are the essentials of classroom of 1? Like what are the most valuable things of a classroom of 1? Like some stuff we were hitting on was like relationships. I mean, there's a certain level of responsiveness, you feel noticed, that can lead to like feeling valued, and then there's like an ownership on the student's part. So I'm just thinking about how we go industrial on that. Like, I know having just 1 student is easier, but then when you have 130, so how do we use maybe technology, or not even limiting us to technology, how do we get creative around going industrial on those things that we value? Like how might we, for example, using technology to provide meaningful feedback to kids because it's very simple to type it out or to even to verbalize it or to create a quick video or whatever, but somehow engaging those students in building relationships, like how do you go?
Let's focus on the relationship part, right? So I am hopefully creating a good relationship with Gabriel over time, right? Like, that is something that
You're not doing it all
as a mentor,
face-to-face.
right? Not all face to face, right? He's sending messages throughout the week, like asking questions. Hey, can we do this? But imagine that it's not me. Who are the other roles in the school or outside of the school that could be that classroom of 1 environment for a kid?
Well, I think like you, a mentor, right? Obviously a teacher, parents,
Principal.
right? Principal, leadership,
What about other kids?
Say more.
So let's say that there is a 3rd grader that wants to learn something from a 5th grader, or some variety of other grade levels, right? But that there is some aspect of a relationship that is built. And we do that all the time, right? Like you create a buddy program or things like that, right? I got my first grade buddy and things like that. But in the level of what you were just talking about, where you're getting feedback, right, on something that is authentic to you, could you create a mentorship opportunity for the kids, a mentorship opportunity for, I really like the idea of a parent, and not just your own parent, not just your own teacher, but there is an opportunity there, and it doesn't have to be one, right? Like, yes, that's an ideal case where it is one adult and one kid, but at the same time, could you have a group, right, that is meeting about Goat Simulator?
Well, thinking about like cultural responsiveness and relationships, and in those questions, it talks about how do you build community, and though, yeah, so you might have these one-off pen pal things going on, but also access to groups, creating a larger community. I think it's promoting community, you know? So thinking about like the vision, and in the top right corner is the network icon, like expanding that network beyond teacher student to student, principal student, parent student, you know, just expanding that learner in the middle, what their network is. Who are those knowledgeable others? Who are people who care?
Yeah.
We gotta create that access and structure for that.
Well, and I think about the role that you played, where you were essentially playing matchmaker, right? Where you said, I think this kid might respond, right, to something different. And I think you might be the person to provide that, right? Who are the matchmakers in the school for our kids? Because I think there's a lot of value there in being able to, because it's not just anybody,
No,
right?
no.
Like it is someone that
Right.
would have a vested interest in that child.
And would have what that child needs. Some
Right.
piece of what that child needs, maybe not the whole of what that child needs, but a piece of what that child needs. I also think about, like we've talked about licensed personnel, we have classified staff, I have custodial staff. I have paras, I have health para, family liaison, they're all
Bus drivers.
bus drivers.
Mm-hmm. It's almost like if everybody sort of put out there what are your interests and passions, or like ask me about ...
Mhm.
And then like and then you make that visible. So as a learner, I see that Jackie is into something that like I totally want to learn more about. So then I seek you out, or I'm trying to figure out a problem I don't get, but I see that you're somebody who probably could be a good lead on that. So then I might reach out to you. Because it makes me think about like the vision of our student badge system is really from only like a teacher giving a student a badge, noticing they have a 21st century skill, to a student advocating for that badge and using a claim code, and not just from their teacher, but from anybody inside of the building who has a claim code that they can say, I collaborated, will you look at my evidence? And you know, my principal says, sure enough, you did, and bang, I get it. Or somebody from the outside of the school or whatever it might be. It's like expanding that network and allowing structure for the user to be able to know who's got what they need, and then empowering them to be able to go get it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, my team has the vision that, not next year, but the following year, that our Genius Hour opens up a little wider. So they were very clear that they needed it to be at least a grade level, having the same Genius Hour, shared Genius Hour,
Mhm.
or 2 grade levels, and they didn't care if it was 2 adjacent grade levels or not. They want a wide open Genius Hour where everybody has Genius Hour simultaneously, because then this teacher says, these are the interests happening in my room, this teacher says, these are the interests happening in my room, and kids can pick. Oh, I wanna go to Jan's room because she's doing roller coasters, and oh, Jackie's doing how to play guitar, so I wanna go learn how to play guitar.
Cool.
That's their vision for it, which
Yeah.
is amazing.
I mean, one of the things that both of what you just talked about, it requires a level of transparency and it requires a level of trust, right? Like, I trust that you are not going to make fun of me for being, I love this, on the struggle bus, Like, I trust that when I say I'm interested in this super nerdy thing, that it is something that you're going to go there with me on, right? Like, it's something that is going to be, right? Like, Nick, you can't imagine why someone would want to perhaps run around the city as a goat, but like going there with the kid and saying, yeah, let's see what we can do as a goat by butting things with our heads, and like that we can experiment our way to something, right? Yeah, I think there's something really valuable. Before we sort of close out, I'm interested in any other things that we might be able to pull out and say, this is something that would allow for a classroom of 30 to feel more like a classroom of 1. What are the other things that we could be doing other than matchmaking, other than sort of thinking about what are the roles, playing off of the interests and going to the people who have those interests?
One of the things we talked about was, I think it's heavily personalization, is that student interests drive the conversation and the learning, or conversations and the learnings.
Say more.
So let's take Mr. Gabriel here with his running around as a goat. That's his interest, right? So that can drive conversations about what is it, what is the purpose there, what is the interest there, and the learning. What is behind it? Maybe it's video game design, maybe it's something else. Maybe it's the curiosity to see a city, to get to know it inside and out, versus just, oh, I'm going from my house to my school and then, these places with my parents. Who knows? But maybe that's a piece of driving the conversations within the classroom. And
The
what is
new
it that-
Google Earth is like,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so something that, okay, it leads to that. All right, we're going to use Google Earth and explore a place, and then you're going to come back and tell us about it, or I don't know, right?
Well, and actually that component of you're going to figure it out and tell us about it, my reaction to all of the I don't knows was, well, what if I don't know something? Me personally, like, I'm not really sure how to play this game. I'm not really sure what's possible here. Can you teach me? And he said, yeah, I can teach you how to do that. Can we do it as zombies? And that was like, he wanted to be a zombie goat. Well, of course we can be a zombie goat and then do it.
Yeah.
But like, when you flip that and you say, well, can you teach me? Then it becomes, not only are you interested about this, not only can you explore that, but then you can also share that out. And I think I'm really interested in where people go with I am ready to share out versus like, I need to share out before the end of the year or whatever it is. And who gets ready to do that? Who feels comfortable enough to do that?
Will you
Or
have
how they do
checkpoints
that.
along the way?
Or I'm on the struggle bus and I'm willing to admit that, right? I
Right.
mean, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
And I think being able to say, can you show me that, or can you teach me that? I think that's one of the key components to deepening the relationship. Because it's very clear that this relationship between you and Gabriel has come a long way in a short period of time.
Very true. Yeah.
It's probably very due to you saying, hey, I'm interested in what you're interested in, and I want to learn and hear from you.
Yeah.
Versus how often do we hear that in a normal classroom?
And I don't want to say challenge, the mind shift that has to happen for teachers is they're very much used to being the experts, and it very much pushes them out of their comfort zone when they have to say, I don't know something. And we know that's going to be a struggle for our staff next year, that they are going to be pushed because they don't know everything and can't know everything. So it's a shift that has to happen in a teacher's brain. Because our teachers went into education because they wanted to share answers.
You know what they know.
Right. And now they need to flip that and just share questions.
And share how to find it.
Right. So it's a big,
Yeah,
it's a big
I
shift
see
in
that
thinking.
too, yeah. And you asked about ways to make the 30, so I think that's a great example, but just in a regular classroom, spending that first time at the beginning of the year
Mm-hmm.
having them think about what their assets are, how they learn. And I heard something the other day about, you know, 'cause I used to do learning styles and all that. That's really not the best way to do it. Just have them create that profile, what it is. But I think that's time well invested up front with those, you know, have them know that you care about that and get to know them and take a snapshot.
Well, I think that mindset shift of, okay, at the beginning of the year, I remember as a teacher, and I see it all the time, still being so pressured to, okay, we gotta get started, we gotta get into this curriculum, we gotta move, otherwise we're gonna be behind, versus saying, it's okay, we're gonna stop, we're gonna take some time, we're gonna do this. We just did the activity I was sharing with you guys today, the doppelganger activity, we just saw that teacher do that. And I could tell it was a real stretch for the teacher to provide 10 minutes, 15 minutes before starting the unit for students to do something that was totally not based on the curriculum, the standards, the content, etc., to create relationships. Like that was I could tell there was a battle going on there.
Mm.
How do we support that? For it's okay to do those things, right? It's okay to build that community, to build that environment, to strengthen those relationships.
Well, and I think it goes back to, Jan, what you were saying about shifting the expectation for the student. The onus is on the student then to demonstrate how. To demonstrate how this applies, how this comes back and achieves the level of rigor or the standards themselves. And that to me is maybe a part of the conversation that we're missing when we're saying make time for equity, make time for project-based, make time for these other things. We're not, if we keep the onus on the teacher for having to demonstrate that their students are learning versus the onus is on the student for saying this is how this work matters to me, this is how this work means something to my learning and how it does demonstrate that I am learning what I need to be learning.
Like you said, you can say lots of different standards, you know, the research, the presentation, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a big shift. I think a lot of people feel that, a lot of teachers feel the onus is on them.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
How do we support them with, no, the onus is on the student
Well,
to
and
share.
students that give some pushback too, because, you know.
It's harder.
You're not
Way
saying, I'm
harder.
just gonna look this up and do this, I
Right.
have to think, I have to come up with those, and some students will love it, but there's others that have, John calls it, played the game of school so
Right.
long.
Oh, I had seniors who were like that.
Yeah.
Honor students, seniors.
Yeah.
Like, what? Just give us the equation.
Right,
Like,
exactly, so it's
there
not
is
just
no
a shift for
equation.
teachers.
You have to make yourself. No, you need to give it to me.
And that's the trick,
Exactly.
that's the other shift for teachers, is they have to shift from, I know what the standards are, and so I plan my instruction for the standards. They have to shift it to, this student is learning something, I need to
Have to
find these
figure out where
standards.
it- yeah.
Help them find which standards fit.
Mm.
You know, that
Anastasis.
when we was there last year, that's kind of, they had a like folder of standards for kids, and as they did projects, they'd go, oh, now you've met this, and you
Mhm.
know, and that, and.
Yeah, so
Did
it,
you do that?
I did not know. I should.
I mean,
Because we're talking about how we changed our report card then to
Right.
where we're going.
Mm.
Because where we're going, does the current report card says you have to teach these standards
Right.
in this quarter, and they have to be here at this quarter, and that's not gonna meet our needs.
And we
so.
added the numeracy standards to the report card for K-5 tech, and Erin was kind of in a panic thinking she had to hit every standard
Mhm.
every quarter. I'm like, no.
Right.
Some grades won't hit any, oh, yeah.
Well, what if it was the report card was the student that was able to show it,
Right.
right? And then they have a teacher, they have a mentor, they have an older student, whoever it is, says, I think that meets it, right?
Right.
Because the student has explained, not just, here's the work I did, but here's,
Justify.
here's the standard,
Yeah.
here's
Yeah.
why this work meets that
Evidence of
standard,
competency.
here's why it's important, right?
Yeah.
Here's why I like goats running around the city, right? Then all of a sudden it becomes
Yeah.
this much larger body of knowledge and evidence for, yeah, absolutely.
Well, I think that ties back to the vision in the icon in the bottom middle of the data. We're like, where's the student in the center, that learner in the center has ownership over where they're at, what they're doing, how they do it. And so by providing a structure like what you just described, Nick, then the onus is on them to show evidence of competency, explain why it's important. Maybe even go so far as to explain how do they get there, talk about their network, and through that they're sharing out like what they've accomplished and things like that. Yeah, it feels like we're very top heavy with adults assessing kids. And can we have kids assessing themselves? Like, how are we building that into the big picture?
Yeah, and to me that really does ring true on how we get a classroom of 30 to feel like a classroom of 1, is by supporting students in being able to demonstrate, as well as supporting the teachers in being able to make the room, right? The space and time for those relationships, because I do think like management of 30 individual classrooms is harder than trying to do that all in one. But when you're looking at who is doing the work, maybe it's not harder. Maybe it is something that you could try and that you could do. And so for next year, we will be getting out of the visioning part, because I feel like we actually have established it pretty firmly, what this looks like as a narrative, as some level of understanding. But we should start sharing what it actually looks like in our classrooms. Dawn, I want you to be here next year sharing what Genius Hour looks like, right? Like, I want us to be on the lookout for each one of these components. Where are the classrooms that feel like a classroom of 1? Where are the classrooms that feel like the kids are in ownership of their data, or they're constantly sharing their work and getting feedback? Where are the classrooms that they're tapping people outside of the classroom in order to be mentors or leaders of learning? And so I'm gonna ask this question. If you have additional thoughts, please send them my way, but who needs to be here next year to share these stories?
I would love it then if we could get a student, I don't care what
That's
grade,
exactly what I was
K-12,
gonna say.
at least one student needs to be part of this discussion.
You see 5 exclamation points
Yeah.
there?
Yeah, we need students in this
That's what I was
conversation.
gonna say.
Who else?
Teachers.
Okay.
I know it's hard, the schedules,
But why not,
virtual.
right?
What about parents?
Yeah, I'm interested in that. How would you feel like, because I'm also very aware that like teachers are heavily invested in education. That is not, and parents are too, but like in a different way.
Very different.
And so how is it that we can support them as a part of that? So that would definitely need, at least in my own head, some additional thinking.
Well, I think like some of these people might not be at every single session, but building
Right.
structures that incorporate
Mhm.
because I'm thinking like, having a principal here is freaking fantastic, because we're hearing like leadership challenges, responses to those, like creativity, like how you're doing things. That provides so much insight to us. And I wonder, having a P20 director who can get behind this because they have a principal or principals who are getting behind this, that can spread it like sort of the top level piece. Also thinking about like instructional coordinators that if they are being called an access team, but I mean they're heavily invested in instructional models and the standards, and so these approaches we're talking about as far as meeting the needs of every kid while hitting the standards, it's going to be important to have them on board.
Yeah. If you have additional thoughts, I don't want to keep you too far after our time, but if you have additional thoughts, send them to me. Do you mind if I put those images up, or are those
No,
secret?
they're fine.
Okay.
There's nothing in them that's confidential or
Okay.
anything. It was just a chalk talk that we did as far as
Yeah.
Struggle bus.
we spent.
The
We
struggle
spent an
bus, I like
hour
that a lot.
literally reading through resources.
Yeah.
And then decided to do this all silently, and then came
Oh,
to the
really?
discussion. So this was a chalk talk, yeah.
Yeah, I think this is really interesting. as a learning artifact, right? So really interesting to me. Thank you very much, Dawn. Thank you, thank you, thank you.